You're watching TAG TV.
Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I am Uzma Jafri. Here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Friday, the 13th of July. 2 security personnel killed in terror attack in India's Jammu and Kashmir. NATO issues declaration on Afghanistan during Brussels summit. And heavy clashes take a toll on Afghan forces and Taliban. And now for all the details. 2 security personnel were killed in a militant attack in Anantnag district of northern Jammu and Kashmir province on Friday. The incident came 2 days after 1 soldier was killed in an encounter with militants in Kupwara district of the province.
2 personnel of India's paramilitary Central Reserve Police Force or CRPF were killed in a militant attack in Anantnag district of northern Jammu and Kashmir province on Friday. Soon after the incident, the area was cordoned off by the forces to trace the militants involved in the attack. Senior security officials said the CRPF men along with police were on patrol, during which militants opened fire, resulting in injuries to 3 personnel. They were evacuated to the hospital. However, 2 of them injured personnel succumbed to their injuries.
जो इंजर्ड हैं उनका इसका नाम है बदन सिंह, इसको आए है ब्लड इंजरी लेफ्ट फुट, और संदीप इसको ब्लड इंजरी आई है राइट आर्म, और एमएल मीना ASI was brought dead.
India accuses neighbouring Pakistan of training and infiltrating militants across the border to spread unrest in Kashmir Valley. Pakistan denies the allegations.
In news from Pakistan, Pakistan's Awami National Party staged a protest in Peshawar city on Thursday against the Pakistan Army and killing of a party leader in a suicide bombing attack earlier this week. The leader, Haroon Bilor, was also the party's candidate for the upcoming general elections.
Members of Pakistan's Awami National Party or ANP on Thursday held a protest against the Pakistani army and the killing of its leader Haroon Bilor in a suicide bombing earlier this week. The party had earlier on Wednesday declared it will contest the general elections and will not be cowed by the incident which happened on Tuesday during one of its rallies in Peshawar. Haroon Bilor was all set to fight general elections on July 25th but was killed in the suicide bombing along with more than 20 persons. The ANP said his wife would now contest the elections in his place. ANP and anti-Taliban party was also the main target of Taliban attacks in the 2013 elections, during which senior ANP leader Bashir Bilor was killed in a suicide bombing. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan claimed responsibility for Tuesday's attack. The Pakistani army has announced it would deploy over 3,70,000 troops to ensure peaceful, fair and free elections.
News just in. An explosion targeting a political rally in Pakistan's northwestern Bannu city killed at least 4 people on Friday. Politician Akram Khan Durrani, who is running for a seat in Pakistan's upcoming polls, escaped unhurt during the incident. The attack was the second major bombing to target a political rally this week, raising fears of violence ahead of general elections on July 25. Meanwhile, in a recent turn of events in the illegally occupied Gilgit-Baltistan region, several locals carried out a protest against the police after it baton-charged a group of women who were holding a peaceful demonstration over the issue of water scarcity.
Enraged over the brutality of the police forces against the local women of Gilgit-Baltistan, the residents took on street, sloganeering against the law and order situation in the region. The incident took place when a group of women were holding a peaceful demonstration against the government, citing non-availability of clean water in the illegally occupied region. On witnessing a rising dissent, a platoon was directed to baton charge the protesting group of women, injuring several of them and leaving their men furious over police brutality.
कोई सालों से हमारे यहाँ पे पानी का बहुत बड़ा मसला है और आज हमारी बहनों ने माओं ने आज यहाँ पे एहतजाज के तौर पर अपने रिकॉर्ड जमा कराने के लिए यहाँ पे रोड पे निकले थे, जहाँ तक काफी ट्रैफिक जमा हुआ था, तब पुलिस आके ठीक ठाक तरीके से औरतों के साथ बदतमीजी किया और लाठीचार्ज करने लगे थे.
Locals accuse that the men in uniform are mere pawns working at the commands from Islamabad and have been trained to stamp over every dissenting voice. They plain torture and forced disappearances, detention and extrajudicial killings are common practices in the illegally occupied region.
In news from Afghanistan, NATO on Thursday wrapped up its Brussels summit with a meeting focusing on Afghanistan. After the conclusion of the summit, NATO issued a declaration on Afghanistan and said it is committed to sustaining its presence in the country until the conditions change on the ground.
NATO allies wrapped up the two-day Heads of State and Government Summit in Brussels on Thursday and issued a declaration pledging to continue support to Afghanistan in its quest for peace. NATO allies also pledged to continue funding Afghan forces till 2024. Meanwhile, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg, in joint statement on the declaration, said the alliance is committed to sustaining its presence in Afghanistan until the conditions changes on the ground.
Today, we also decided to sustain our presence in Afghanistan until conditions indicate a change is appropriate. And we extended our financing for the Afghan security forces through 2024. This will help them further develop their special forces and air forces as they continue to fight international terrorism.
NATO believes that a political solution to the conflict with the Taliban based on national consensus will be essential in order to achieve sustainable stability and security. The alliance also said that it strongly supports the Afghan government's unprecedented offer of unconditional peace talks with the Taliban.
More on news from Afghanistan. As NATO leaders met in Brussels, heavy casualties were reported among the security forces and the Taliban in clashes across Afghanistan. The latest clashes came amid efforts by Afghanistan's government to find a peaceful solution to the Afghan conflict.
A Taliban attack on an Afghan army outpost near the northern city of Kunduz killed at least 29 soldiers, while airstrikes in other parts of the country killed dozens of insurgents, officials said on Thursday. The soldiers were killed when the Taliban stormed a base in Pulin Momin, an area between the provinces of Kunduz and Takhar, late on Wednesday. On the day that NATO leaders in Brussels were discussing Afghanistan, the fighting was a sharp reminder that no end to the war is in sight, despite the hundreds of billions of dollars spent by Kabul's international allies. The latest fighting comes despite speculation about possible peace talks between the government and the Taliban. On Thursday, officials said dozens of militant fighters were also killed in ground and air operations in parts of eastern Paktia province. While in Kashmir, to the south, at least 27 Taliban were killed by an airstrike on Wednesday.
Moving on to news from Nepal. 3 people lost their lives in heavy floods triggered by incessant rainfall in Nepal's ancient Bhaktapur city on Thursday. The 3 members of the same family died after their house collapsed due to the rainfall, which continued for about 24 hours. Almost 3,000 people have been temporarily displaced and many are unable to return home due to increased water levels, reports suggest. The heavy downpour has also led to landslides. The backbone for trade and supplies, Narayangarh Muglin section, was also reportedly functioning one way as a landslide disrupted the highway. The weather department has warned of continued rainfall till the next 3 days, with warning of heavy rainfall in eastern Nepal. A photo exhibition was held recently in India's northern hill town of Dharamshala to showcase the Tibetan culture. Apart from the display of photographs, a book on Tibetan costumes and jewelry was also launched during the event.
A photo exhibition showcasing Tibetan culture and tradition was recently held in India's northern hill town of Dharamshala. President of Central Tibetan Administration, Lobsa Sankhe, was the chief guest of the event that aimed at presenting the lifestyle of Tibetans and their dress. A book titled Costumes and Jewelry of Tibet, written on the same theme, was also inaugurated during the event.
This is a compilation or collection of all kinds of dresses and the jewelry that Tibetan men and women used to wear in Tibet. So it's from all three provinces, and the government officials and the deities as oracles as well. So this is, in some ways, is a rare collection or a statement of evidence that Tibetan people and Tibetan costume are different from the Chinese and others. Hence, this is a very important initiative that needs to be recognized.
So these costumes are more or less pictures before the Chinese occupation. So our younger Tibetans will know that this is the type of costumes and jewelry we wore. And so it's a preservation of our culture and tradition.
Thousands of Tibetans had fled their land following spiritual leader Dalai Lama after rebellion against the Chinese rule in 1959 to India. The Nobel laureate's supporters operate government in exile and promote Tibet's autonomy by peaceful means.
Hindu devotees took a holy dip in River Ganges in India's northern Varanasi city on Friday as the country witnessed a partial solar eclipse. They also observed fast during the eclipse, which lasted an hour, whereas the temples across the country remained shut.
Hindu devotees in India's Varanasi bathed in the holy river of Ganges on Friday as the country witnessed a partial solar eclipse. Devotees gathered at Dashaswamedh Ghat, a famous bank on the river Ganges in Varanasi city of India's northern Uttar Pradesh province, for a bath. Both men and women performed rituals while standing partially dipped in the river. The devotees observed fast and avoided eating or cooking during the eclipse, which lasted an hour, whereas the temples across the country remained shut.
श्रद्धापूर्वक जहाँ भी सूर्य ग्रहण लगा होगा वहाँ स्नान ध्यान पूजा पाठ इत्यादि अपने शरीर शुद्धि के लिए लोग करते हैं।
अभी दोष के निवारण के लिए जब तब पूजा पाठ दान पुण्य किया जाता है, गंगा जी में स्नान किया जाता है, माई के नाम से दिया जलाया जाता है, अपनी मनोकामना को उनसे कहा जाता है कि जो भी रोग दोष लगा हो उसको आप ग्रहण करिए।
A solar eclipse happens when the moon casts a shadow on the earth as it passes between the earth and the sun. A total eclipse, more frequent than total eclipses, is when the earth passes within the penumbra of the moon.
Well, that's all we have for you from South Asia this evening. Now our viewers can watch the show on southasianewsline.com. You can also visit us on facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time next week. Have a great weekend. Good night.
You're watching TAG TV.